What an incredible, inspirational, and humbling experience to be here. So I just want to express my gratitude for that. Oops. I'd like to start with a quick data collection. How many folks in the audience are entrepreneurs? Okay. And this is probably a loaded question. How many are innovators in the room? And who fancies themselves as an inventor? Okay, now the big one. How many people in this room have an idea that might change their position or someone else's? Everyone's hand, please go up. When I think about entrepreneurship and the experiences that I've had, I think about how it's sold to folks. This map represents, generally speaking, how venture capital is distributed throughout the country. We should all be familiar with that. As innovators, it's our job to take different perspectives on how we see things. And as I was looking at this map, thinking about what we're doing at 100K Ideas in Flint, Michigan, I started to think about how do I tilt this map on its side so I can get a different view of what's happening. And here's what I see. I see that those clouds of resources that come through capital or come through support are above the ground floor. They do not include people with ideas. They support grandiose visions for $300 million or billion-dollar exits. So we layer that and we look at it and we find out that the support goes to the entrepreneurs. But how do we create entrepreneurs? You don't start at entrepreneurship. You need to start by cultivating ideas and supporting anybody that has an idea. When we ask people to step up to be entrepreneurs, we might as well say, hey, why don't you get off the couch, write a little plan, do some jumping jacks, and sign up for the Olympics? That's literally what we're asking them to do, and we're setting people up for catastrophic failure, and they will never try again. I love chasing unicorns as much as the next person, and I've been on several unicorn hunts. Unicorns are mystical creatures. While everyone else is out chasing unicorns, I'm going to herd reindeer. Still mystical creatures, but at least they exist. And when you start herding reindeer, you will find the unicorns. But if you don't look for the reindeer, we won't come up with any unicorns. Before I get into what we're doing in modern-day Flint, Michigan at 100K Ideas in the Ferris Wheel Innovation Center, I'm going to share my journey. A wonderful, sometimes confusing confluence of events that is driving the way we look at entrepreneurship. So I'm from Marquette, Michigan, which is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It represents 33% of the land mass and just 3% of the voting population. It's often left off the map. Many people think it's part of Canada. But that's okay because there's a whole vigilante group of social media experts that will make sure that it gets put on the map if you leave it off. I was born in 1970. It was a time when you could be tied up in the front yard without sunblock on, and that was childcare. Thank you. It was my first lesson that many constraints can be overcome. I was an inquisitive kid. I started early on experimenting with electricity. True story. I was a tinkerer and an Evel Knievel-inspired connoisseur of gravity. And I was a daydreamer. I was not paying attention in class. My first invention, I'm 7 years old, and I'm in the kitchen, I'm watching my mother slice up a banana. The biggest concern for a 7-year-old is the well-being of their mother. So I rushed into the garage, and I went through a bunch of things, and I tried to find something that would save her thumb. So I took an old inner tube and a bicycle tire, made sure there wasn't any dog poop on it, and brought it back into the kitchen. And this was the first lesson that not all inventions are innovations. It did not change my mother's behavior. No matter who was selling it to her, my thumb cutting board lived the rest of its life in the junk drawer in the kitchen. This was the most paralyzing question to me when I was growing up. What do you want to be when you grow up? You're telling me I have to pick one thing, and I have to wait until I'm a grown-up to do it? In between 10 years old and probably 25 years old, rather than picking one thing, I worked over 30 part-time jobs, doing just about anything that you can possibly imagine. And what it gave me was this variety of experiences that gave me the confidence that I could walk into just about any situation and handle it. At 25, I found myself as a sign salesman traveling the UP. But that was not what I was passionate about. I wanted to start a business. I wanted to launch a product. I wanted to bring one of my ideas to market. So I went to a support center with 13 ideas on a list. And they said, come back and see us when you have a success. When you're driving around the UP and you're selling signs, that is a lot of windshield time to daydream. And I thought to myself, well, I'm passionate about mountain biking. What if I promoted mountain biking in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan? So I created a cutout mock-up of a magazine, and as I was selling signs, I started selling advertisements. And I came home to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I said, we have to launch a magazine. She said, what are you talking about? I said, I just sold $10,000 worth of advertisement, and I quit my job, and we have 30 days to get it out. So we turned our apartment into a publishing house. I built a light table. We borrowed a Xerox printer from the Xerox salesperson, and we smoked that thing. And we published a magazine in 1996 called UP Mountain Bike Magazine. The wonderful part of this story is that is still in existence today, but I was only there for the first 3 years. Somebody else, an operator, took that over and continued to publish it. It started to feel like I was an operator, and that is not in my DNA. So I started daydreaming, this thing called the internet. I said, I want to put my magazine online, but I want to do something instead of just putting print. Can I put video online? And I was told it cannot be done. So on a Mosaic browser, I figured out how to compress some videos and put them online, 6 years before YouTube was launched. Now, I was passionate about mountain biking and action sports. I missed the cats and dogs. At the same time that I was developing sharing videos online, I was having a hard time filming and keeping my hands on the handlebars. So I started repurposing security cameras into helmet cameras. That's what you could buy for $300 to hook up to a $700 camcorder, and that was one of the first commercially available video cameras, helmet cameras. In June of 2002, Outside Magazine ran a 1/3 page review of the product. And as our advertising model was collapsing during the second internet bust, our camera sales grew. And that next week, I sold $30,000 worth of those cameras. I said, whoa, I'm in a business. And I signed the worst damn term sheet in human history. I did not know what I was signing. I didn't know what a warrant or a call or a put was. I just knew that I wanted cameras into the marketplace. And by 2009, I had sold $22 million worth of 6 different iterations of helmet cameras. And founder's syndrome set in. I had all these people. It's this big, giant organization, and I could no longer move it in the direction that I wanted to go. So in November of 2009, I took my office knickknacks, my helmet, camera, my notebook, and my lamp. And I walked out the door, and I was on my own again. One lesson. An innovator will hurt the entrepreneurial opportunity in favor of the product, and an entrepreneur will kill the product in favor of the company. And somewhere is that space in between, that balance. I also learned that at 39 years old, I thought I had ridden the bull for the full 8 seconds, but my hand was actually stuck under the rope. Why so big? Why do these companies have to be so big? Why do startups have to start on the 4th floor? Why did I need a $300 million exit when I had 25 family sustainable jobs in Marquette, Michigan? And I was doing manufacturing in China. So I started to think smaller. I gave myself an experiment. Could one person with less than $100,000 and in less than a year bring a product from concept to market? Could I do it without hiring any employees? And could I manufacture it all in Michigan? And what if the exit was not $300 million or $1 billion? What if it was $50,000 to $60,000, the medium household income? What if we started cultivating entrepreneurship around small numbers so people can exercise the trade? So I did it. It cost $90,000, and the first year's sales was $97,000. I can make 100 pair of skis a day in the same plant that makes the running boards for the Jeep Wrangler in 25 hours of manufacturing time. Fractional manufacturing. People would come to me on a regular basis. David, I have an idea. I don't know what to do next, and I can't tell you what it is. Good thing architects don't work that way. So I started to think, can I build a platform that would relieve the innovator of the entrepreneurial burden? Let's get people moving forward. Let's not make them swim across the channel every single time somebody has an idea. So I started pitching this idea of small. What if we aggregate small ideas into big opportunities? And I pitched it. And I was told, no, we want big. Got it? So then I thought, wait a minute. All of my startups had one thing in common. Undergrad college students were always my first hires. Customer service, editing, shipping and receiving, the first e-commerce platforms. My first programmer smelled like French fries because he was coming from McDonald's. So we have undergrads going to school working at McDonald's instead of programming. So I went out and I started shopping this idea, and finally I said, I'm going to give it away. And I went to Northern Michigan University, and I said, give me $500,000 and 5,000 square feet. It only took a year and a half to convince them to do that. And we cut the ribbon, and here's what we found out. In a town of 21,000 people in the middle of nowhere, one new idea walks in the door every 3 days. And these are ideas coming from everyday people, end users. And they're not grandiose ideas, and they do not need to be. It didn't take long for Governor Snyder to come up and say, why aren't we doing this everywhere in Michigan? And he pulled me aside, and he said, I want you to meet Phil Hagerman of Flint, Michigan. David, would you go to Flint and work with Phil to come up with a plan that leverages this across the state? Quick sidebar on Phil, bootstrapped from 1975, a single-family drugstore into a publicly traded company that will do about $6 billion in sales this year. So Phil said, oh, by the way, first time I've had a W-2 for 25 years. So I'm now officially eligible for unemployment if I need it. So I got to Flint, and Phil had bought 2 buildings, iconic buildings that had been sitting idle for more than 40 years. The Dryden building is where General Motors was formed, and the Ferris building alongside of it, a commercial building. So I did what we do. We hired college students to start renovating the building. 7 stories, 40,000 square feet. And we cut the ribbon in 9 months. And the governor was there this time, to a packed house. No one had been in that building until that day for over 35 years. There's a coffee shop, there's a printing and shipping department, each independent small businesses, and there's the storefront to American innovation, 100K ideas, and here we are celebrating the 100th idea that came in at the time this picture was taken. And we got to work, and people started using the facility. Anybody with an idea. You don't have to have any money, you just need a concept to walk in. It's called 100K Ideas because there happens to be 100,000 people in Flint. And if every single one of them brought in an idea, we would be able to rebuild the middle class. It's a nonprofit funded by SkyPoint Ventures, the C.S. Mott Foundation, Huntington Bank, and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And it's a very, very simple model. Think, make, market. We're going to think about it, we're going to make it, and we're going to market it. The first step is 30 minutes is free. And here's where our deal flow comes through. Someone walks into this retail location on Saginaw Street in downtown Flint to buy a cup of coffee. They look up at 100K Ideas, and they say, I have an idea. Well, no kidding. How does this work? Sit with us for 30 minutes, and we'll explain it. We're going to think about your idea. We're going to benchmark it. We're going to make sure that it's not for sale on Amazon before we start spending money on this solution. We're going to make it hobo-type, prototype, model. I don't care. Something that can prove what you're working on has validity, and then we're going to market it. Did somebody buy your idea? Now we have a business. This is where you start. Very simple. Relieve the innovator of the entrepreneurial burden, gets the juices flowing, you draw people in, and you draw out their ideas. Develop a workforce of innovators and entrepreneurs that this country has not seen before. Because when you take these college kids and you tell them that they're accountable, they're responsible, they're going to interact with the customers, and you're going to work together, you mechanical engineer and you industrial designer, you're sitting next to each other. They don't know that in college. And here's what happens when you concentrate on formulating ideas in your neighborhood. You generate manufacturing opportunities. You generate supply chain. You start reigniting the economy within your area. This is what's happened in 11 months. 195 ideas have walked in the door. 146 assessments have been done. So the difference between that was not worth pursuing after 30 minutes. It's about high volume inclusion into entrepreneurship. Here's the kicker on this. That 32.5%, we have created a culture who sits on their ideas for up to 5 years before they activate. We can't afford to do that. When those numbers start popping up, people start taking notice, and then these fancy innovation people from Rhode Island pay you a visit. Here's one of the success stories that we found out of the people that visit us. I met the most inspirational, authentic entrepreneur I have ever met. Kiera Tyler. She was working alone in Flint out of her mother's driveway, creating a fashion line called Calm Clothing. She did not know the difference between net and gross margin. She was transferring money via Western Union. She went to Google to find a trademark lawyer. She does not own a computer. She set up a supply chain with Pakistan. She has sold $150,000 worth of inventory out of the trunk of her car. That's an entrepreneur. Those are the people we have to supply support to. This one's going to be unique. Typically, that's not going to be a unicorn. But when you meet Kiera, you absolutely know that she is a unicorn wrangler, and she's going to pull that one in. So here's what we did. We launched the Ferris Wheel Innovation Center, which is a co-working space, and 100K Ideas. We created ground floor inclusion for entrepreneurship, and now here's the result. 5 investment firms and funds are moving into the building. Silicon Valley is saying, you vet, support, help seed these ideas, we're in for seed. Then we'll follow with A. They're coming to us because there's authentic deal flow. I'm going to steal something from Biff. I think we found the gold in the gray space. And I'd like you to come to Flint and see for yourself. And I want to thank Maggie for doing my slides. Thank you very much.